Angela Pye up to introduce her panel from Cultivation to Counter. Give it up for Angela.
Thank you so much, Lori. I guess I don't have to introduce myself because I can't imagine a more thoughtful, heartfelt introduction than from Lori. Thank you so much. Lori is absolutely one of my closest friends in the industry. I respect her. She is somebody who has been an expert and really led a lot of brands and businesses. But for me, I've been in cannabis for about 7 years now, from marketing for single brands, multi-brands, fully vertical, publicly traded, privately owned, ancillary, all of the above. I think the only part of the industry I haven't touched is on technology, which makes for this conversation really timely because we're looking at this market in Ohio that's been rapidly growing, and the success doesn't come from one single point. It really comes from connectivity across from cultivation, production, supply, marketing, and in terms of retail. So we have a wonderful panel for you guys. So let's bring on our panelists. Let's have Lauren, Chris, Fadi, and David. Join me on stage, please. Woo! Have a seat. All right, lunch crowd.
Everybody full of cookies?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Where'd you find cookies?
They're in the lunchroom.
Oh, you know when you know, right?
Yeah.
That's where the cookies are.
Cookies.
All right, follow Chris for cookies. The right kind. All right. Amazing panelists that we have who are strong operators across multiple markets and in Ohio who've been in the market for a long time. I'm going to allow them to make self-introductions, and then we'll jump into some meaty conversations.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I'm David Todd. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Solutions for GrowGeneration. Where at GrowGeneration, we're a publicly traded hydroponic supply company who at our largest had 63 retail stores. Over the past couple of years, we're starting to whittle back our retail presence and focus on our supply chain and logistics and supplying the highest quality products at the best prices in the timeliest fashion to more of commercial scale cultivators like some of us on the panel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Delande. I'm VP of Retail Operations for Klutch Cannabis. We're an Ohio-owned and vertically integrated company in Ohio. We currently have 7 retail stores. Yeah. I'm a pharmacist by trade, and I jump shipped and came into the cannabis industry when dispensaries first opened in Ohio in 2019. So it's been great ever since.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Guthrie. I'm Director Go-to-Market for 365 Cannabis. We are an ERP delivery team. We deploy a Microsoft product called Business Central. This is Tier 2 ERP. Based on the Microsoft Business Central platform. We have a cannabis dedicated team and cannabis dedicated extensions to allow metric and biotrack connectivity, track supply chain all the way through from cultivation to delivery, and get all of your systems into one unified platform.
Very cool. Thank you.
Fadi Boumitri. I am the founder of Ascension Biomedical. We are a cultivator in Ohio, and more recently also Rome Dispensary, a dispensary in Ohio.
Very cool. Well, we're going to kick off with Lauren because the retail part of the industry is one of my favorite parts. It's where the rubber meets the pavement. You get all the first party data, you see where all the behaviors are. So kick us off, Lauren. When you're thinking about the dispensaries and across your stores, where do you see the biggest disconnect and the inconsistency in terms of where the market is right now?
Yeah, I would say as far as the supply chain, broadly speaking, consistency and availability right now would be, kind of the issue, or consistency. The customers, they're expecting consistency. They want availability. When they find a product, they're creatures of habit. When they find a product they like, they want that product. And when they come back and you don't have it, you lose their repeat. You lose their trust in that repeat behavior. So I think, pricing in the market, that's like more of a downstream lever. It's not necessarily an issue, but a lever used to manage kind of upstream decisions. So, with our own stores and we kind of have a unique experience with the strength of the Klutch brand across the market. It's consistency in supplying our own stores as well as our wholesale partners across the state and supplying the market. So it's a constant conversation about how we deliver that. So it's, yeah, I would say consistency is what we're looking for.
And then, Fadi, with connectivity, if different aspects of your teams, from cultivation and productions are not talking to one another, what does that breakdown look like, and what does it cost you?
Everything. It costs everything. At the end of the day, the people and the processes that you put in place in this industry are going to make or break you. I've seen that from both ends of the spectrum, going from teams that knew what they were doing to teams that didn't, and then back to teams that did. It will literally take you from 0 to whatever number it is that you're capable of going to gross potential. So it means literally everything. And a breakdown in the communication can be the difference, as Lauren said, from having your own dispensary fully stocked with your own products to you're entirely sold out. And it could be literally days apart if you don't have that constant communication. It could be weeks instead of just a day.
Any horror stories that you want to share?
Oh, no, I've never had any horror stories at all whatsoever. Not even just like a week ago when we had a very unfortunate incident. One of our team members had a family member pass away, and you learn very quickly how important any one team member is when they're gone for a couple of days, and all of a sudden you have your own products on your own shelves missing because that person is the superstar in charge of that.
Right, when you have a single point of failure.
That's exactly right.
We don't have a lot of backup in cannabis.
Some people are better at that than others. I'd like to think on the cultivation side, we've had years to get that right. On the dispensary side, we're less than a year old and we're still figuring that out.
A little bit more challenged. Well, David, when we're thinking about how companies underestimate the rate of growth, how may, your company help your customers overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Lauren was saying, consistency is what people are looking for. And if you don't have consistency in your supply, whether it be timely delivery, which we handle from our logistics side, or consistency in the quality of your supply that we handle from our product side, right? So we've invested a lot of money at GrowGeneration in our private label products, in their application, as well as not just the use of them, but really understanding, the metrics of consistency and variability. Because when, like take for instance our brand Charkware, any given day, we have millions of plants growing in them. So when we have this many substrates out in the field, small margins of error are actually huge crop losses for some of our biggest enterprise customers. So we've set out to really quantify what that is and then equip the cultivators with that information so they can drive risk and variability out of what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, for Chris, when you're really helping companies look at your favorite topic, demand planning.
It is.
Let's talk to share with the folks in terms of how integral and strategic is important, in terms of revenue, supply, and, hammering growth.
Well, what I was just hearing from the panel is like the importance of, first of all, not having a homemade system that represents a point of failure. And that is like a homemade system that is created by a key team member or too much information living with one key team member. Everybody from the vendors to the cultivators to the retail team sort of needs to have visibility at all time as to what is happening. Not only to make sure that things are not out in the dispensary, but that the cultivation team has insight into the demand that is being created by the dispensary, and making sure that once that demand is identified, that the vendors are queued up to deliver in time to meet the production plan. So like one system all the way through where every aspect of the organization is not siloed. I think this is going to be more of a make or break proposition than it is right now, because margins are so thin. Everybody is like now surviving on their cash flow, and things have to be where they need to be at the right time. And communication and visibility is the only way to do that.
Yeah, and those numbers have to be true, right?
Yes.
They have to be true. You have to really ensure the quality of your data.
Yes.
Like, we will get orders from some of the largest customers that will be 300 to 400 units short of whatever that process was. So double checking, all the way through, not just what you're projecting from a yield perspective, but the raw materials and goods that go into generating that yield.
Right, because making sure you have the resources on hand to execute a 9-month grow cycle to meet demand, like you're going to need the revenue in place to run that all the way up. And again, like connecting supply to demand to cash flow and availability, like that's the kind of granular visibility that is going to make or
I've
break.
lived through homemade ERP systems.
I'm
and
so sorry.
It was so painful. It was very painful. And also, IT teams trying to customize off the shelf.
Yeah.
It's been very, very hard.
Yes.
And at the sort of the tangible part, the practical application of when I hear from retail operators, people who are actually running retail, and retail buyers, they have to go into their own system and try and claw in as much of your branded, 1P products as possible before it goes out into competitive dispensaries. And that is a huge breakdown in terms of demand planning.
Yes.
If you don't have the visibility on what the stores need, which is going to give you the higher margin, or what the brands need, that's going to have the wholesale visibility within the marketplace, your ability to be able to scale is just broken.
You have no chance. You need to know what needs to be where and on time. And I don't think that the viability of building an ERP system that is going to meet all of the unexpected business demands is possible in the time frame that we have. It's why we lean on a proven Microsoft product and then customize it with cannabis-specific extensions and a cannabis-specific delivery team.
Well, Lauren, how do retailers influence, and how much can it really influence in terms of making sure that supply meets demand and that, your end consumers are getting what they're looking for?
I think how much it is now and how much it should be, there's a gap there for sure. I think retailers probably have more influence in, helping to drive some of that production planning. But there's absolutely a gap, because as a retailer, as we've talked about, we have the real time, the most data into what is happening and what's being sold, and even more importantly, what's getting repurchased, because it's not really about just that initial sale, right? What is getting repurchased? What is that sell through? And so retailers should not be, and for your production, shouldn't be just reacting to what is the production is giving you, right? Retail should really be in that influencing what is being produced and that demand planning. And if you're a vertically integrated operator and your retail and like production demand planning are not together, then you're missing a huge advantage, because a stable supply chain is when the supply is really meeting demand, and we're not having an oversupply, we're not having an undersupply, and the retailers are really the first line in seeing what is going on and being able to flag pivots and where we need to change to make that kind of alignment happen.
Sure, because the market thinks that retailers have all the power.
Yeah.
But so if you had a wish list of, for operators who are out there, what might some of the things that you would hope that you would be able to get that you're not getting today that would make your role more efficient?
I would probably say operators that are partnering with you in looking at those signals and, looking at data together, that are willing to help actively support the sell-through. They're not just looking for the sale, right? And how can we do that creatively, whether that's through exclusive drops or different kind of deals and gifts with purchase that the brand can help support, or, exclusive pricing, like creatively versus, there was another panel earlier talking about just discounting. So I think the operators and the brands that are looking to be a partner in actively following through and helping those retailers with the sell-through are going to be the ones that win.
Yeah, I've heard that within Ohio, within the current market, that because there's just, I guess, not as much supply and inventory as possible, does that open up for brands to be able to, come in when they couldn't kick down the door before?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is an opportunity right now that we have. I think, though, as the market matures and you have more brands come in and we have, a lot of operators working on expanding their capacity and that starts to shift, then you have to really be, focused on helping with that sell-through versus just, depending on the supply is needed, so they're going to take it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. With Fadi, in terms of operational efficiency, because you run a tight ship, as you're looking at operational efficiency and staying responsive to consumer demand, what are some of the changes or practices that you've put in place that's really helped you?
This is an easy answer for me because the practice is the right person, period. Somebody that knows what they're doing, which I will not pretend that I am. I grew up in a retail business, so I have some retail experience, but having the experience of somebody that has been in the cannabis industry, has been in other industries that fed into the cannabis industry, knows which metrics to look at, knows what matters to the customer walking in, and has the, I don't want to say visibility, but has spoken to enough of the patients in the past to know what drives them, what are they really looking for. That's what matters. Having conversations with the people that are walking into your retail locations and asking them what they're looking for. And obviously, you're going to get some really good answers. You're going to get some subpar answers, people that are going to give you answers that don't necessarily help what you're doing. But as retailers, your job is to take that feedback, try to slowly make those changes, because you don't want to pivot based on the anecdotal data, but you also do want to determine, is this a overarching theme or an anecdotal theme, right? And as you make those slight variations, if you're seeing a response to them, you start to increase the variation.
What might be a recent consumer behavior that your company has pivoted to meet?
So we're betting a little bit on old school genetics right now. There is a divergence in the market. There are people that are just searching for the highest THC percentage that they can get, and then we have, from what we've seen in our own dispensary and through our wholesale channels, there is also a contingency in the market of people who are looking for the nostalgia of strains that they smoked in the 90s.
Yep.
And you have to be able to meet a little bit of both of those. And one of the things we're trying to determine internally is, do you have a brand for each of those, or can you run both of those under one brand? And that's a question
Portfolio
that
architecture has got to be one of my favorite topics. Like, if you can't figure out your good, better, best and what your portfolio looks like, who you're designing for, who you're marketing to, what's the pricing and COGS strategy. So how did you tackle that?
we're still tackling it right now. We're literally in the process right now of determining which direction to go in, and we have a couple of brands currently, but there's also the the creative side that wants to create new brands all the time, and how many brands is too many brands, and how many different brands can you put assets behind, and all of those conversations are literally currently ongoing within our facility.
Wow. Well, it looks like there's growth going on over there. So
yeah, need to grow more weed.
Right. So what does demand-driven efficiencies look like?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's the
demand.
Yeah, I mean, there's the fallacy in every garden in America and probably in the world. We want to grow more weed of better quality, and people really underestimate that. When you scale up, you can leverage small wins. So if we can add 3% over time to yield or quality, or again, gross revenue, which then turns into margin, from swapping out a consumable to something that's trusted, tested, researched, and worked with specifically for our crop, not just a carryover product, right? That's when, the value proposition of GrowGeneration private label brands really kicks in. And that's what we really like to do with our enterprise level customers is really assess what their goal is and what the market is calling for them to do. And break everything down to, their water consumption to the square foot, plant size to substrate volumes, all these other metrics, and look where can we leverage a good product fit. And when
you also need to know what people are growing for. Are you growing for extraction? Are you growing for premium flower? Are you growing for a portfolio of flower? And
then on the cultivation side of things, it's product, technique, and people. Just stack those up, and then infrastructure equipment as well, but let's just assume in this scenario everybody has the same access to infrastructure and equipment.
They don't.
But they don't. But, where I see a lot of opportunity for people that, aren't going to build out more space where they're at is we need to squeeze more out of that current space. And we'll step in and hold their hand all the way through the finish line and make sure that whatever they needed in a trial, we defined that criteria before we kicked off and that we completed it in the end.
Wow. Well, Chris, jump in and help me here. We've heard that there's less supply, there's more demand, there's going to be more operators based on what, Cy Scott had presented, that there's going to be, another 200 licenses coming on? How are we going to help them?
We are going to try and make sure that people are just not blowing the doors off of their rooms and growing as much as they can. I started my cannabis journey in 2010 in Seattle. And so I've seen the cycle happen, the boom and bust cycle happen.
Well, I'm from California. So.
Well, then you've seen this cycle happen 6 times. I've only seen it happen 4. But what I have seen over and over again is the childlike wonder of a new cannabis investor that has their spreadsheet that says they are rich in 2 years, and that depends on selling all of their inventory all of the time. But like you were saying, you have to match your production to the demand, or you run a series of risks. You risk, first of all, just taxing your supply chain and your facility to the point where it is exhausted. You end up owing vendors money, right? Because you have produced more and invested more into your crop and your processing, your brand.
You have a pest problem and your whole crop is
gone. Never mind crop failure, and then you have to readjust everything. So making sure that people are producing to their demand and do not have inventory sitting on the shelf, because that is money asleep on the shelf, not just in inventory, but in labor, in space, and in branding. I have had customers who spent $1 million on a beautiful brand and a beautiful packaging line, but they overproduced. So that first beautiful line of OGKB came down perfectly, and then it sat on the shelf for 6 months. People got it at a discount, so immediately that brand's value is punctured. And then they open up that jar and it smells like hay. That means that entire $1 million investment is now gone and you have to start again.
It's a perishable product.
It is a perishable product, not a widget. It's not a brake pad that can sit on the shelf for 2 years. You need to make sure that you're making a production plan that delivers fresh product that actually maybe creates some scarcity around something that was gorgeous, that maybe you can make them wait for a second and build up some hype instead of just flooding the market with everything that you can.
Actually making more or what you thought, and maybe in sales and revenue by creating that demand and being able to hold the price and not drive the price down, and then not lose repeat customers because they got your old product, right?
Yes, and that's the danger of just living by discount. You become known as a discounted brand, and everybody knows in sales, you can always give back, but you're never gonna claw it back.
Once you bring the price down, it's pretty hard to bring it back up.
Right.
So, with Klutch, your dispensaries, your stores hold a certain place within the market. You're not the value, volume, cheap alternative. It's a premium experience. I've been to a number of your stores, and the customer experience is really great. So when you're thinking about, price compression that will come, how are you holding that position from a retail standpoint? And then what are you demanding out of brands to be able to support you?
Yeah, I would say that we definitely have positioned ourselves and want to be in that more of a comfortable, vibe that we give off, more of a premium store. We make sure that we have everyone, stuff for everybody. We do have the budget and the value there, but it's not like the main focus. We do a lot of work about trying to be strategic with our discounting strategies, getting creative, as I mentioned before, doing small batch drops and things that can drive traffic on top of just discounting, gifts with purchase,
You're in
all
a
those
great
kind of things.
position because you guys are fully vertical, so you can adjust your inventory. Certain brands, certain products are moving faster, so you're able to meet that, and then you're seeing slowdown. So you're getting that retail data faster than a lot of people.
Yeah, like I mentioned, if you aren't vertically integrated, it's really important to position yourself with a retail partner that's willing to work with you like that, or a headset or some kind of data that you're getting to really be able to follow that demand.
Well, how from the cultivation level are you seeing the ability to be able to adjust?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's going to take 12 weeks, right, to grow a plant?
I would say for any of these cultivation businesses here in Ohio, make sure you have a pretty agnostic system. And what I mean by that is like you can plug and play as many genetics as possible, right? You shouldn't be curating, again, your product's technique people toward a specific genetic or family of genetics, right? You should really understand how they're affecting your entire portfolio because, my licenses personally, they're in Oregon, right? And the only thing that I owe my customer is better quality at a better price and better, differentiation between strains. And in that market, I have a couple acres outdoor. I have to grow 120 different genetics across it, single strain, right? That's what the market demands, and I have to farm it in a way that is successful across 120 different genetics. So when you're building out your practices inside of your grow, make sure you understand as this market grows, you're gonna have to continue to probably fill up the same SKU bucket to the same height and then build a new SKU bucket, right? They're probably not getting much bigger on an individual SKU level. So you need to learn how to cut your benches into a third, into a quarter, and grow more strains per solenoid. And at GrowGeneration, we can help you guys do that.
Well, Fadi, take us home. What are some of the, I have a question that says, what does it take to win long term? Let's not go long term. Let's talk about, something that's shorter term. Going into the rest of the year, looking ahead into 2027, what do you think operators really need to win?
I think it starts by determining who you are. And I think there's a lot of people that have a different notion of who they are than the market has. I was one of them, right? Getting into the retail side and finding out from the other side some things that we thought everybody knew about us that they didn't. Some things that we thought people thought of us that we didn't get that feedback. And again, there's anecdotal and then there's what's a little bit more of a theme, determining what the themes are, determining who you are as a company and what you want to pursue, right? So for us, being a small cultivator, we will never have the capacity that the majority of the Ohio cultivators have. As a result of that, we have to lean into small batch craft quality. And so at times we've gone away from that, whether on purpose or whether it's by circumstance, right? And getting more consistent over the last 2-3 years, especially with the crew that I have today, has meant a lot to us. And then even from having the right crew, you get into a winter time where a door gets left open or whatever happens, you do end up with, a lower yield in the room or a lower THC, or it's a living plant, and every day that you don't give it the perfect temperature environment that it's looking for, that maximum genetic potential that it could have reached will not be reached, and you'll never get that back. So you have to try to give it and this is what we're doing now with our expansion, try to give it the best environment that you can while it's alive, and then try not to degrade it as quickly as you can after you've killed it.
Yeah, playing physics as a sport.
I love
Basically.
that. Chris, so I've heard people, processes, and intention.
Intention is my favorite one.
Okay.
I think, but it is also being intentional with your data and being intentional in making sure that that data is available to everybody, so everybody can make the decisions on the same data set from the beginning of the supply chain all the way to the end. And like we were saying, just like move with intention and planning.
All right. I know we're supposed to cut off, but Lauren, any final words of wisdom?
I agree with Chris, the data and partnering that demand planning and adding some innovation in there.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thanks,
so much for
friends.
joining us for a
Thanks,
priceless
Angela.
conversation.
Thank you, Angela. Let's give it up for Cultivation.